Welcome to another episode of Ask the Experts. I'm your co-host, Jeffrey Walk.
And I'm Elizabeth Finlayson. We're from the networking group, TNG, which is Chicago's premier business networking group focused on helping members and making a difference in the communities we serve. Ask the Experts is an effort to share our knowledge with a wider audience.
In today's episode, we will discuss the topic of constructing a successful career. Our guest today is Rosemary Swierk of Direct Steel and Construction, located in Crystal Lake, Illinois.
Rosemary, thank you for joining us today. Can you tell us about your role and the services that your company provides to commercial customers?
Jeffrey and Elizabeth, it's a pleasure to talk with you today. Direct Steel and Construction offers three different services. We're commercial general contractors, construction managers, and owners representatives. So essentially, we build buildings. Our focus is low-rise, non-residential construction. So that might be restaurants, retail, office, industrial, institutional, educational, recreational, religious. And within that focus, two different market segments. One's federal government contracting, and the other one is private. And our private projects, we tend to work with large, small, and mid-cap companies. And our goal with those companies is help them maximize the return on their investment and help our clients build networks.
So Rosemary, Direct Steel prides itself on its valued engineering solutions and focuses on green energy. So can you talk about the ways that Direct's value proposition impacts its clients and community?
Sure. So construction can be a really dirty industry, both figuratively and literally. And there are 5 projects to any construction project. And whether you've reconstructed a bathroom or you've built a 300,000 square foot facility, those pillars are the same. So it's scope, budget, schedule, quality, and safety. And the vast majority of construction projects experience a bust in one or more of those pillars. That bust is so frequent and so disruptive, even the American Institute of Architects writes about the increased contentious relationship between owner, architect, and GC. And at Direct, we're really proud that we bucked that trend. We love to be brought into a project as early as possible. And I'll give you just one example of how that impacts a client. So there were 3 long-term business employees that wanted to buy out 2 long-term employers. They knew in order to achieve their growth plan that was going to need a new building. They brought Direct in about the same time they brought their commercial broker in. The broker provides them 20 different properties to take a look at within their geographic preference. We're looking at those properties a little bit differently. We're looking at it from a constructability budget schedule perspective. Dead center in their search area is a property that's largely improved. It's got the curb cuts in there, the first layer of roads, but we also understood their issues, soil suitability, retention detention requirements, where the utilities were coming from. Because of our knowledge of things like that, we were able to help negotiate that cost from $6.50 a square foot down to $1.87. We saved them $500,000 on the cost of that property. We also understood the company's growth trajectory and felt that they may be entitled to some state incentive money. And we guided them through that process. And sure enough, they got a commitment from the state for $1 million in the form of $100,000 a year over 10 years. We went to the county. The county provided $12,000 worth of concessions and property taxes over 12 years. Went to the municipality. Municipality waived permit fees, tap-on fees, had to go through a PUD modification, got those fees waived, and the process expedited. That totaled about $300,000 worth of value. Then when it comes to the construction, we get to be seated with the architects and engineers before they've drawn anything, but after they've done their due diligence. And that process yielded another $500,000 worth of savings. And I'll just give you one example of that. We're seated with the civil engineer, and he's looking at his papers, and he says, yeah, we're going to put the building at this elevation. And my team and I are looking at each other, and we say, hey, any chance you can raise that a foot? If we ask that question after it's drawn, the question's no. But because we're asking it now, he spent about 10 minutes looking at his documents, looks up and goes, yeah, but why? That one change yielded our client $250,000 worth of value because they weren't unnecessarily hauling off soil. So here, we haven't even left the preliminary phase of the project. Our services have already substantially aligned scope, budget, schedule, and quality. and yielded our client over $1.8 million worth of value. So here are these three new business owners who barely have any net worth. And at the end of this project, they've got millions of dollars of net worth that they otherwise would never have experienced. So that's direct steel and construction. That's structuring solutions.
But that's the value proposition. It's not just delivering it, it's actually finding ways to optimize the construction itself. That's amazing.
It's very rewarding for everyone. It's an entirely different relationship than most people in construction experience.
Yeah, it's almost like an advisory set of services.
Yeah, it's very consultative. At the initial stages, our goal is to provide our clients with information which allows them to make informed decisions. And that's really powerful.
How do you measure success for your staff to make sure that, like, for example, are they doing the best job they can? Are they forming the right relationships? Are they identifying the right opportunities to create value for the client? And then for the extended team of contractors that you bring in, and for the customer, because those are like three different arms and you're trying to satisfy all of them. How does direct steel, balance all that?
There's a tremendous number of variabilities in any construction project. You're working with typically 16 different divisions. It can be 33 different divisions, depending on which CSI format that you're looking at. And each one of those can have a bust. So the ultimate gauge of success is the client, right? What does that project look like when you're completed? What's the level of satisfaction from the client? And I think if you look at Direct's website, directsteelllc.com, you will not only find testimonials, you'll also find accolades. And I'll challenge you to go to another general contractor and find that level of satisfaction. Again, something that we wear that hat very, very proud. We're very, very process with a capital P oriented, and we're very metric oriented. There's checks and balances throughout the entire course of the project, all relying on what is actually 5 pillars: scope, budget, schedule, quality, and safety. And safety is a critical component of that.
So you mentioned this fourth pillar of quality. I mean, actually all of these in the way that they work together, I can definitely, from my own experiences, compare it and see that this is much higher a standard. But so can you talk about how you incorporate quality into the planning, execution, and control of projects?
Sure. So it's identifying what that client's goals are. That's number one. And 2, how can we best achieve that? So there's all different types of labor out there. You've got a guy who'll work on his pickup truck, and that comes with associated risks, right? Potentially insurance risks. Maybe a couple times a year, we will solicit bids, we'll get a bid, we'll ask for the certificate of insurance. We actually call the insurance company and match it with the policy, and it will be a fraudulent certificate. It's amazing how many things like that you encounter throughout the course of the years. So construction can be very, very risky. So quality is a very big portion of that. Our specifications are very exacting. Once we align those pillars, we exact that. And the trade contractors are required to comply with those specifications through submittals, through on-site supervision, through a number of different ways to track. Again, this is something that we've got a very high satisfaction level.
So when an anomaly comes up with quality, or let's say an unplanned decision, which is a nice way to put it, how does that get resolved to the satisfaction of the customer and to ensure that the other pillars aren't disrupted?
So and you sound like someone who's had some construction experience, most projects experience change orders. In commercial construction, those change orders can be $50,000, $100,000, $120,000. That's when you really see things get messy. Our projects, because we're brought in so early, because we're already working with the architects and engineers and owners up front, I'm not saying we don't have change orders, but I think the last change order we had was $120. It's just a totally different level, and we have a contingency in there for that. So it's, the client's not going back to their banker and saying, oh my gosh, we're over budget, I don't have the funds for that. we're just not encountering any of that. We're very much have those 5 pillars aligned at the very beginning stages, and that alignment stays very consistent throughout the course of the project.
Great. No surprises. That's a great way to operate.
Mm-hmm.
What have you learned as a woman leader during these ups and downs of business cycles? Obviously, we're going through one with COVID, that you can share with other women who aspire to start their own businesses, some of them even now, or achieve to achieve a measure of success?
So I would think the advice I would give to a woman business owner is probably the same I would give to any business owner. I'll preface that. So I'm one of 6 kids. Pictures actually behind me of my siblings, and my 2 of my 3 older siblings are men, right? So brothers, and although I'm younger, would try to go toe to toe with them. And it was maybe about 5 years ago, we were celebrating one of my mom's birthdays, and each brother was seated on the side of me, and I turned to him and I said, I really owe you guys a lot of things. And they look at each other like, I've never done anything nice intentionally to her. Have you? And the other one goes, no. And I said, no, seriously. Remember how we were growing up and all the time you guys have had your buddies over. And in order to divide the teams, both of you would be the captains. And then you'd pick your teams. You always pick me first or second. And one brother quickly chimes in. I said, well, I did that because you could catch the ball, not because you're my sister. And my other brother said, well, I did it because you were fast, not because you're a girl. And I said, exactly. I knew that there was no pity party for me. I didn't see that there was a gender difference. I knew you selected me for my capabilities. And without knowing it, I think that that's a lesson that's maintained and stayed with me for my whole life. And I'm very, very appreciative of that. I think the basis of any successful business is that value proposition. What value are you providing that to your client? So I've given that message a number of times, and a number of times I've had people come up to me and say, I know what my value proposition is: better, cheaper, and faster. And I really challenge that, right? Everyone can come in and say they're better, cheaper, and faster. But really, what's tangible? What is your true value proposition that resonates with someone? With us, I know it's a business owner that now has retirement income that they otherwise may not have had. That's a huge value proposition. I know that businesses that have real estate tied to them tend to sell for higher multiples. That's a huge value proposition that most business owners don't know as they're building. So it took me a long time. I knew what we were doing, but it took me a long time to articulate it in such a way that it resonated. And once I did, the company has continued to grow, and just everything about it is just so much more fun.
So you've talked about the quantifiable aspect, which provides a competitive differentiator, especially for women. What about the relationship part of it? Because you've obviously done something to say, we should bring Rosemary and Direct Steel in at the front end because of their knowledge and because of what they can provide. And you built a book of services and consulting capabilities that allow you to no longer have surprises. And that's something that's not always easily measured.
True. Well, it is if what we've established at that preliminary stage very much consistent, it's very measurable. It's when you have those busts that it becomes contentious.
Right. So what you've been able to do is actually reduce the stress for those projects and for the customers that you're serving.
Substantially.
And I'm guessing for the contractors that you work with as well.
Absolutely.
So that's a value that goes beyond just.
So yeah, and just to be clear, we are the general contractors or construction managers, so we are building it. But when we're working with our trade contractors, absolutely.
And then I have a question for you, Rosemary. So given how you love to come in at the early part of a project so that you can really help that client, do you ever have, and do you accept, if someone comes to you and they're midway through the project, we're like, we've had all these problems and can you come in and save us? Do you come into those kind of projects, or is that not really a good alignment for you?
It's very, very difficult to come, once a project experiences a bust, it's very, very difficult to come in and save it. There are instances where we have done that, but it is exception and excruciatingly difficult.
Makes sense. Well, Rosemary, it has been so great talking to you. I feel like I learn from you every time I talk with you. So if folks want to get in touch with you, how can they best reach you?
Sure. So the office number is 815-444-8844. The email address is solutions@directsteelllc.com. And of course, our website is www.directsteelllc.com.
Great. Rosemary, thank you for your time today. The information and guidance are very helpful. We greatly appreciate your experience and hope our listeners find it equally useful.
Jeffrey, Elizabeth, a pleasure talking with you.
Thanks for watching this week's episode of Ask the Experts.
I'm your co-host, Jeffrey Walk.
And I'm Elizabeth Finlayson.
Don't forget to send us your questions, suggestions, or ideas. As always, you can reach us at asktheexperts@gmail.com.
Have a productive week.